was actually hoping to talk about Castlevania next.
Okay.
When I think about Castlevania, I think about vampires. When I think
Yeah.
about vampires, I think of Javy and Suriel.
That's fair.
I mean, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Like, I'm
Me
pale
too.
as hell, so yeah.
I'm more of a Danny DeVito type vampire.
But you and Tack, all three of you guys have watched Castlevania, correct?
I
Yes.
sure
The
have.
new Netflix show.
Yeah. That epically long series,
That's
right? Takes forever to finish.
all 4 of those episodes.
It sure felt long.
So oh, okay. Well, let's get into it.
All right.
I watched the first episode, and this was after actually talking to you, Dan, and you seemed kind of down on it. But I watched the first episode, and I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm kind of into this. I could see myself watching
First
more.
episode is the best episode.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So let's just give a general setup for
let's
people
get
who haven't
the
watched it.
let's get the primer here. We're not doing spoilers here today. Yeah,
I don't think we need to go super into it.
Okay.
Like, I think,
Just maybe the setup.
I just want to
Yeah.
make sure that people listening can feel safe.
yeah. Let's not spoil anything.
All right.
I think the general setup, though, everything that happened in episode 1, I'm comfortable talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the premise of the show.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
So I'll
basically all world building. That first
I'll
episode.
say I was very intrigued by it. I know it's technically based on Castlevania 3.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
And I went and looked up the Wikipedia entry for Castlevania 3, and I'm like, yeah, I could see how this is maybe loosely based.
It is, but,
But they definitely have some license.
they put some nods in there for the hardcore fans too, a little later down the line. But the core plot is definitely like a little bit more. I don't know. It's certainly not the good guy kill all vampire thing that Castlevania
It's a little more
is.
morally gray.
Sure.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
let's just set up. So it starts out, this girl, do we know her name?
We do.
This woman goes...
Starts with an L, right?
It's like Lisa, right?
Lisa, yeah, it's Lisa.
the mattress company.
I love. Yeah, let's talk about mattresses.
She goes, she meets Dracula, and seems like there's a little budding romance going on there.
It is.
she's-
Yeah.
She's an unusual woman, and Dracula seems uncharacteristically nice to her. Let's just say.
It is
So
a-
it seems like there's something going on.
He's
Seems
very
taken aback by-
milady.
Yeah, he
Dra-
seems
Drac-
very taken
Dracula
aback by her
finds
bravery.
the good of humanity in her, and he
Right.
thinks that humanity might be worth coexisting with after all, and then starts to give them, science, which is perceived as magic at the time.
Right.
So that gets her into some trouble. Long story short, Dracula gets very upset, and you're probably going to side with Dracula. So he's not really the bad guy in this.
Mhm.
Okay.
I know.
Well,
I
that's what I
was.
was curious about. Yeah.
I was like, yeah, you know what? Dracula did nothing wrong.
Okay.
All right?
Well,
That
flash
was-
forward 20 years
Well-
later.
Hashtag Dracula was right.
yeah,
He does end up killing an entire village, but
He gave-
you
hang
can
on.
understand why.
He was very clear about.
He was
was-
generous.
He was an actual really nice guy about it. He's like, you guys have time to leave.
Yeah, you guys have a year.
Just bounce.
Get the hell out of Dodge. I am giving you a year, and then they don't, and they get what they deserve.
But if
Yeah.
not,
I
I'll
am
kill you.
totally,
If
I'm
not, I'll
totally
kill
Team
all of you.
Dracula.
So, so like this is a recurrent thing with the series. There's not a whole lot of love for humanity. Humans are portrayed as pretty much scum and immoral and corrupt
Okay.
throughout the thing. And then you've got Trevor Belmont. Okay.
Best hero name
Well,
ever.
let's back up. I think
Okay.
people might be, if they haven't watched the show, the basic setup is Dracula falls in love with a woman. The church kind of like intervenes,
Mhm.
does some things, upsets him, and he's like, "All right, you've pissed me off.
Mhm.
You have a year to make peace
A
with
whole
your maker."
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
long
which is
time.
pretty generous. But then there's a scene too where it's like he's trying to like dredge up the like monsters from hell. It seems like
Mhm.
it's going to take him a year to like cast this spell where like he unearths hell on Earth,
Yeah, he
right?
just summons a bunch of
So I'm like, okay, there's a reason for that he gave him a year. And then a year later, it kind of ends, the first episode, a year later, Dracula's unleashing all his powers across the land.
And it's actually a pretty nice setup. And, as we talk about this, I don't want people to get the impression that I completely hated this. I thought it was a very mixed bag. And I think there are I hope that this will get people interested in some other anime, because this is an anime. There's no bones about it. Like, however you want to typify this thing, it's a westernized anime.
Mhm.
I think there's some other really great titles out there that you should check out if you liked this,
Sure.
that do a lot of these things better. And some of those would be Vampire Hunter D, Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, Hellsing, Hellsing Ultimate, stuff like that.
Okay.
Check those out. You will not be disappointed. Anyway, back to the actual thing we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
We got-
So, before we get into what's wrong, maybe I'd love to talk about like what's good. You guys like
Okay.
anything
Yeah.
about it?
I-
Animation style I really liked.
yeah, it seemed pretty good.
The dialogue was fine. It was
Mhm.
better than certainly a lot of other things in the.
Yeah, it seemed pretty well written, and it seemed differently voice acted than a lot of animes, where it just feels like these are actors doing lines versus these are specifically voice actors. You didn't get the feeling of like I can recognize this person doing lines in a
Sure.
studio. It felt better acted.
Didn't
than
feel like the general like over the top
that. Yeah,
voice acting. I think some of us are used to with
Mm.
traditional Japanese
with
anime,
one
right?
exception.
Okay.
And I think that would be with Trevor's penchant for for laying down F-bombs.
Okay.
They seemed a little out of place and jarring at times.
Yeah, to me, it reminded me, I know, we're calling it anime and whatnot, but it's written by Warren Ellis, who, did like
Transmetropolitan.
Yeah. And it definitely feels sort of like that. It even looks more to me necessarily than anime, like that edgy 90s kind of comic, like Preacher and stuff. That's what it reminds me of, especially the violence and like the F-bombs and just some of the writing. Like there's one point where Trevor has this line that's, he's in a predicament. He's fighting something and he goes, well, God shits in my dinner again. And it's like a very 90s sort of line.
That sounds like a very Warren Ellis line.
Yeah. So I like that aspect of it. Like it's really, it definitely feels like something straight from the 90s.
Yeah, the combat is brutal and grotesque, which is good. I think that fits Castlevania nicely. There's plenty of gore. There's eyeballs getting ripped out. Lots of fun stuff like that. If you like that kind of stuff, you should check out the anime called Ninja Scroll. Okay.
Okay.
Oh boy.
Oh, that's another 90s
That's a very
flashback.
That's a really you'll like that one.
That's definitely rated M for mature, whatever the anime people use.
It is. Yeah. It's it's adult content.
Okay.
We're all adults here.
It seems like one of your major complaints, Dan, is that there's other anime out there that's better.
Okay, let's talk about why. Like I thought the pacing actually was weird, right? Because this is only like 100 some minutes, and it felt a lot longer.
It should have just been a movie.
There's a lot of exposition that's unnecessary, and after the exposition, it does like a post exposition where they're telling you about stuff they already told you. Like it's just like, okay, we get it. Yeah, I understand they're trying to like keep the audience, make sure they constantly know what's going on, who's who, but it felt unnecessary and to the point where it's just like hammering it to your head where like, I don't know if you respect the audience enough to just keep telling them the same things over and over. We get it. We know who the bad guy is.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's interesting that it feels drawn out.
Yeah,
because I heard some people saying that it kind of felt condensed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it feels
Cut
like
off too soon.
it feels like if you're gonna throw around game terms, it feels like a tutorial that ends right as like, okay, now you're ready to actually watch this series, and that's the exact point where it ends.
Certainly. And
all the
some
pieces are in place, and then they just roll credits.
some of my gripes with it, I think, are because of that we never really get off the ground. Like we never take off.
Mm-hmm.
We basically are like, okay, you're cleared to take off, and the plane's on the runway. We start to go up, and that's it. The series ends. So, like, all right.
Yeah.
But
Well,
it's
maybe
only
we'll
4
see it.
episodes.
I know.
Yeah.
And it did get renewed.
But we can only judge
Where I
things
heard-
on those 4
No, I'm
episodes
just
currently.
saying, like, so there should be more coming.
Right.
So if you like what you saw,
Yeah.
like, good news.
And to be fair, like I am in the same camp of like this ended too soon, but I do feel like those last moments were really like a really promising setup for what could come.
Okay.
Like it's a really strong ending. I feel like even though like it ends too soon, I dug that ending because of like the promise it has.
And I think there are enough promising characters. I mean, Trevor, for as much as sort of his language is a little bit like not fitting with the period, I like a lot of. I think he's an all right dude. I like a lot of the supporting cast. Dracula actually seems like a character I'm interested in, not just like I'm totally the worst bad guy ever. He seems more sympathetic.
Yeah, he's not going blah blah the entire time.
He's not the Count.
Dracula is the coolest character in the series so far.
Sure.
Easily.
Okay.
So I want to see more of it. It's just like this isn't like as good a job as they could have done introducing them, but I'm invested enough to keep going.
Yeah, I'm mostly like I left that series going, well, I mostly enjoyed my time with that. They could have fixed some stuff, and also I really want to know behind the scenes decision why they showed off 4 episodes and we're just like, and we'll bring the rest later. Like it honestly feels like a movie that's been cut up into 4 different slices, with the third one being super exposition-y and sort of long.
Well, it certainly could not have stood alone as a movie. That's why, because it has no ending.
It's true.
Right?
I mean, it does have an ending. Like it's just like it's like watching a trilogy of movies. Like
I suppose
it has the same amount of ending that like Fellowship of the Ring does. To me,
Okay.
I think I consider Fellowship of the Ring more of a self-contained unit than this, but sure, I get where you're coming from.
So given that this has a pseudo cliffhanger ending, let's just call it, do you think people who are interested should wait until there's more coming out, or do you think it's worth watching this now?
It's only 100 minutes. Why not check it out now?
yeah, if you're bored, just throw it on. Especially if you like vampire stuff.
And
You
I
could go either way, I think.
I've been critical of it, but like at the same time, as far as video game adaptations go, this is on the top end. Okay, so
Yes.
this is way above a lot of the other garbage
Dan,
we're often throwing.
Dan, don't trip over that low bar.
It's a very low bar, to be fair. but
Sure.
It's no Super Mario Brothers
They-
the movie.
Okay, but here's where I'm coming from. I watched the
Which
first
is a masterpiece.
first half hour. I liked it, but I'm hearing some criticism. That makes me hesitant to even watch the rest of it because there's so much good stuff out there, right?
But you've already seen an episode. You've already got a taste. You should know by now whether you want to keep going.
Well,
some-
but
sometimes
like
it can
the
take a
first
little bit.
episode's the best one.
It
though.
is.
Right. So, but I guess where I'm coming from too is like I haven't watched Westworld yet. You know,
gosh.
I haven't watched The
Well,
Americans.
go home and go do that right now.
Sure, there's tons of good shows out there. Is this really worth somebody spending their time on?
No, you should watch Twin Peaks.
The thing is, it's such a small investment. I'd say fine. It's only 100 minutes, and you'll know what you know. If this was like Westworld or Twin Peaks or something that you have to spend hours upon hours to make that investment, especially with Twin Peaks, where you might not even know if you like it 30 hours in, right? But for this one, yeah, I think you're okay spending the time on it to get to get that feel because it is so short. We're talking 100 minutes,
and it's not like honestly. It's not like you're buying Netflix just for this or like have a subscription. It's already there. You know, you're just watch it or don't. Like you don't have to put down money for it necessarily or any more money than you already do every month.
I think if you're just looking for a good video, you know, a decent to good video game adaptation of one of the, you know, a classic tale, a classic game.
Tales old as time.
Right.
Yeah.
It succeeds in that respect.
Okay. So one more question about this because I'm curious, like you guys are talking about how Dracula, they're making a more sympathetic character, which is maybe, I'm fine with that in an anime, but it's just interesting in Dracula, he's kind of like the series' big bad. He's like the main guy.
I mean, he still is.
And this is based on Castlevania 3, theoretically.
It is.
So do you think that they're maybe headed in a way, like make him sympathetic, but he's still a villain?
Yeah, he's still going to be the big...
Are you guys fine with meddling with
okay.
fiction in that level?
Absolutely.
Considering how bare bones a lot of that. I mean, like I know there's like wikis and stuff, but the base game didn't seem like it was super like focused on story. So I think it's fine to like flesh out a lot of that stuff in ways that might not be sort of cohesive with the game's vision. Yeah. So I'm totally down with that.
I mean, yeah, like how old is Castlevania 3? You know, like
it's like a
25, 30
yeah, it's you know, it's not from a time when games were necessarily concerned with storytelling. I'm fine with them taking liberties and trying interesting things.
Well, what if Dracula was like ended up being the good guy?
He's not. He won't be. This is a very classic anime plot line, basically.
Yeah, I mean, at some point he's going to throw out Medusa heads, and then everyone's going to hate him. So it'll be fun.
That is something I'd like to see more of in the series. Is just tackling classic monster tropes that Belmont will fight. Sure. And there's an opportunity for that still. We just had basically. That's another thing. These episodes were basically set up.
Sure.
These are setting the table. Let's see if we eat at the end of the day.
Okay.
Yeah, it feels a lot like a Telltale sort of first episode almost to me. Where it's like,
okay,
is
that a
promising.
positive? Is that a positive or negative?
It's a mixed bag.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, one other interesting thing to note on this, some of the guys behind this project are also moving on to an Assassin's Creed anime, I heard.
And Metroid is right.
And was that a real?
That's just what I heard.
I think that was a rumor, but yeah, I don't know. That'd be. I'd be more for the Metroid one, honestly, personally. But Assassin's Creed's interesting because Assassin's Creed is a series that has
there's already kinds of I would like to see a dark anime Metroid. That's like gold right there.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's one's ripe for like expanding on the fiction.
Right.
I think
the Metroid's eyes pop off and just explode.
Should people be? Should Assassin's Creed fans be excited? One.
I think this is a promising case for that. Like I think and with Assassin's Creed, there's a little more potential of just like instead of adapting 2 or Assassin's Creed 2, they could just do what the movie did and just sort of have here's Japan or wherever else, and we're gonna make our own story. But I think based on this, I guess it's fairly promising.
I honestly feel like Assassin's Creed is probably one of like the worst offenders of like in video games of here's our expanded universe and almost none of it is worthwhile. Like, honestly, the Chronicles games that they had...
those are really bad.
Those are so bad, and they should be good, but there's this sort of slipshod quality to all of the Assassin's Creed offshoots, where it's like, why... Like, someone just put this through a machine. It wasn't crafted. Like, the games feel crafted.
Right.
Like, except when they're broken.
They're crafted to be broken.
Yeah.
Except when they're broken.
Yeah, except when they're broken. But, there's just something that's, like, not interesting about any of that stuff because it's so oversaturated, and it's like, why should I care about this character, this particular assassin that you have in this one story, because you're just going to jump to like 20 other ones across 20 other various stories. Well, there's not enough time for me to like care about this character like I care about Ezio or the brother and sister in Syndicate.
I don't know. I maybe would have said that about Castlevania in a way, like just like this particular I didn't necessarily care about Trevor Belmont before this series. I think I'm more sort of I think when I say promising, it's more on the merits of this studio and how like I think they did a decent job, like better than most, more so than like Oh yeah, Assassin's Creed is a thing I've always wanted because, like, I agree with Javy that most of the side stuff for Assassin's Creed has not been great.
Sure. Yeah. Did anybody here watch the Assassin's Creed movie, the live action film?
I watched like half of it on a plane. I said I had enough. I'm
oh,
good.
it's not even worth watching on a plane. All right.
I watched it in theaters. It was not very good.
Wow.
You should have walked out of that theater.
I was with friends and I didn't want to.
JV, you should have walked out
what
of
else
that
would
plane.
I do?
Yeah. So I mean, if they do it, it sounds like this could be like the best Assassin's Creed thing. I mean, just seems like
it sounds like they have a really good model to making video game adaptations into anime. Currently.
Well, that's where I was going. It's like it seems like there's maybe a market here because I know Castlevania did pretty well. They already renewed it, so maybe there's a market here to continue to do these. And Metroid, I think would be great. Like I can think of a ton of series that I'd love to see them do.
It's an interesting tidbit. This Castlevania series has been in development for like 10 years. Like Warren Ellis, like basically wrote the rough draft for this series like 10 years ago, and then they just didn't do anything with it until now.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel like he's a fairly known author in certain spaces. So if he couldn't even get it off the ground, like
despite me taking it to task on a couple things, I've seen a lot of positive sentiment out there for it. So people are liking it.
I mean, Suriel, you got some fan fiction rough drafts that you can send to Netflix.
I mean, it's mostly like Animal Crossing, really dark fiction.
Hey,
just like that world, I think would be fleshed out. But
who dies?
Who
dies in your fan fiction?
Oh, everybody.
They all die.
Just Tom Nook swinging from a tree.
Tom Nook just murders everybody.
Oh my gosh.
It's awesome.
Who bangs who?
I mean,
oh boy.
there's
Whoa.
just
we might have to move on.
Oh, cross this family show.
So that's Castlevania on Netflix. Watch it if you dare, I guess.
Thank you so much for watching this excerpt from the Game Informer Show podcast. You can subscribe to the audio version and listen to new episodes airing every Thursday. We cover big games on the horizon, games that we've just reviewed. We have long-form developer interviews, a lot of fun stuff. So check it out every Thursday.